Hi, I'm going to be giving a demonstration today on how to use After Effects to make a production title that you can have near the beginning of your film. And so first of all, you're going to find your After Effects usually down in the dock. So down here, you would click on this AE, which is your After Effects, and that will usually take a minute or two, and it's going to pop up, and you're going to have these windows right here. This panel over in this area is where we're going to put our files that we're working with. It's kind of like the file library. It's called the project panel. And over here, the composition panel, this is where we're going to see what we're working on, and whatever effects we apply to it, we'll be able to see that happening. And then the entire bottom panel works together to, this is kind of like our workspace where we are setting up different animations and such. So let's start by just bringing in a couple files. I'm going to be using this JPEG photo file, and I also have some music here. Not music, sorry, but it's ocean sounds. Okay, so let's start with our photo, and I'm going to drag that down to our workspace in this area on the left. And when I do that, it makes a line that goes all the way across. Since I'm making a production title, I don't need it to be terribly long, so I'm going to go ahead and shorten this up to about, 10 seconds. And that way, when it goes to loop, it'll loop much faster. All right, so under here, where it says passage, this area is where you're going to want to start to open up this panel so that we can start making changes to this photo. So this little down arrow, now we have another down arrow, and we get into this transform tools. So we can have, we can use any of these for starters. And so we've got anchor point, position, scale, rotation, opacity. I'm going to, for this assignment, for what I'm doing, I'm going to use scale and I'm going to use rotation. So I'm going to use scale in order to zoom in onto the image that I have. So if I click on this little timer button, that's going to initiate an animation sequence. And it's going to put this little diamond shape, which is your keyframe. It's going to place one wherever the cursor is. So I have my first keyframe here, and I want to zoom in, and I want to be finished zooming in probably around 6 seconds. Okay, so at this 6-second mark, I can get that a little more precise probably. I'm going to click and add a keyframe. So if I click this diamond, it's going to add a keyframe. So I have a keyframe here, and I have a keyframe here. And this is saying that the animation is going to start here and it's going to end here. So for the ending, if I want to scale, I wanted to have this get a little bit bigger. So I'm doing what's called scrubbing. I'm just taking the cursor and moving it back and forth. And I want to zoom into maybe about here. Okay? So now when I go and I move this cursor back, you can see I'm going to zoom out. And if I hit play, which is just the space bar, I'm going to hit the space bar, it's going to zoom in, and then when it gets to that 6-second mark, it's going to stop zooming and it's going to hold. Okay? So I'll hit the space bar again to stop. And then now for the next effect, I want to have the horizon line kind of tilt back and forth, kind of like how a boat might make it look if you were out on a boat. So I'm going to click that timer to initiate, to start that sequence. And when I do that, it adds my first keyframe. And this time I'm going to put a couple keyframes in. So I'm going to go and right around, I guess, maybe the 4-second, maybe 3-second mark here, I'm going to add a keyframe. And I'm going to have it tilt a little bit here. So I'm going to scrub on where it says 0, and I'm going to go over to this side. That's a little bit much. I just want a little bit. Okay, so it's going to tilt a little bit that way. Now I'm going to go to maybe around the 7-second mark. want to give it a little extra time because I'm going to now go the other direction just a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to add one more keyframe, so I'm going to drag this down to the end, and I'm going to add my keyframe, and then I'm going to put this back to 0 so it's straight. 0, not quite there. If you have a hard time getting to exactly what you want, you can always type it in. There we go. Okay, so if I bring this back, I'm going to hit play, and sorry, there we go. And you can see it's zooming in, and it's also tilting a little bit. And now it's just tilting now that the zoom has stopped. Okay, so that's all I need to do with this photo. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to close this up, close up those little tabs, and I'm also going to lock it. Sometimes you might get really involved in After Effects and you might end up with many layers. And if you're not working on a layer, it's a good idea to close it and lock it so that you don't accidentally click on or change something when you don't want to. Okay, so I need to add some text. I'm going to add the title up here, and just going to click, and I'm going to call this passage. Now, you don't have to have multiple things of text, but you do need to have some text on here. But I want to show you two ways. So this text, this is just going to stay steady the whole time, so I'm not going to change it. And but if I highlight it over here, I can change the font. I can change the font color. I'm going to make it kind of, you can kind of see how it's changing as I drag it around. I kind of want it to be this brownish red color. I can scrub and make the size bigger. I can use, if I come over here in the top left corner, use that move tool, I can place it in a different spot. I can, I believe I can also drag this out a little bit. Okay, so that's good, I'm fine with that. And you can see that it made a new layer down here. So you can see the T means it's a text layer. And I can just go ahead and lock that because that's fine. I'm happy with that. I'm going to add another text layer. So once I click down here to get my cursor, it has made a new layer. Right now it says empty layer because it's going to name it whatever I start typing. So I'm going to say this is a Bon Voyage film, okay, kind of like a production company. And now I want to change this color back to white. I want this to be white. So I'll just grab this little corner of white here. And I kind of want it a little smaller. Okay. And I can also move that a little bit and put it maybe like right here. All right. Now that I have this text layer here, I can go in and I'm going to animate this text. So instead of using this character panel, I can click on Effects and Presets, and there's many, many, many things in here. Don't get confused and go to text here. What I want you to do is try to go to Animation Presets. Now later on you can play with all these all you want, but for right now let's kind of minimize ourselves or limit ourselves a little bit so that we can focus. So under Animation Presets, if I go to Text, I have a folder just for animating text, and then there's a lot of different types of ways to move the text. I'm going to go into the organic folder because I'm looking for a, something to do with water, which is kind of a nature, organic kind of thing. You can see there's seasick, ripple, ocean tide. So I'm going to try, let's see, I think ripple might be the one I want. So if I just kind of double click here and I press play, it's going to show you what I get. So that's what I get when I use that ripple effect. Okay. The last thing that you need to add is some sort of sound effects. You can do that directly in After Effects, or if you want to go ahead and export this, you can work on it in like iMovie or Premiere, and you can add sound in another program if you like. Okay, now to add the audio, I want to take my audio file, it's a WAV file, if I just drag that down here, it's going to make a new layer. Oops, did not catch. There we go. And so now I have 4 layers. I've got my 2 text layers, I've got my photo, and now I have my sound layer. And I can, let's make sure we can hear that. So you can hear, turn that up a little bit. Sounds like an ocean. Okay, and then I can adjust sound under here just like any other layer. So as I click down, I can adjust the audio levels by decibel, and same thing, I can use keyframes. I can turn this on and add keyframes and have some parts louder, some parts quieter, so you can adjust the audio levels using these animation keyframes. Sometimes if you don't hear the sound, you might have to go into, if you go into this preview panel, you can make sure that the sound is on. Sometimes it's muted. You can also see here, there's a mute button, so if I unclick it, then it's muted. If you can see the speaker, you should be able to hear it. Sometimes you even have to go up into the settings up here, and I'm trying to think, it was under preferences. Sometimes you have to go into audio hardware and tell it, you know, to use the internal hardware or something like that. So if you're having trouble with sound, sometimes you have a little troubleshooting to do. All right, so all together, what we've got, let's watch it one more time here. We got the sound, we've got our animations. Okay, and so the last step is to export it so that you can turn it in and view it. So we're just going to go to export, and we are going to add to the render queue. And you're going to get the bottom part here is going to change how it looks. So right here, you're just going to, where it says output to, this is where you can click on that, and there you go. And you can choose where you want it to save. So if I want to save it in the desktop, or if I want to save it to a certain folder, this is where you do that. You can also name the file something different here. QuickTime is great for us, and it's very flexible for you to place it into other films. So this is a good format to keep it. And then you just say save. And once you have that done, you can say render. And you can see here that little blue bar. Now it's done. If you're working on a much bigger project, sometimes that could take a really long time. But this was a pretty small project, and it went pretty quickly. So you'll be able to find your file at this point, wherever you saved it, and you can get that turned in. All right, there you go.